Hello, everyone. This is Cassandra Williamson coming to you from Eastern Kentucky and Hardy in Pike County, right along the Tug River, across from West Virginia, and just a few miles from Virginia, too, right in the corner. So, yeah, this is Hatfield McCoy feud country around here. And if you know anything about this place, it used to be a big coal mining area here, uh, massive coal mining. As a matter of fact, on the way into the the town of Williamson, which is the county seat for Mingo County, there used to be a big sign that says, "Welcome to the $1 billion coal field." Well, that sign is no longer there. That's because the coal industry is no longer um, as big of an influence as it once was. But the thing that has stepped up, though, has been ATV and UTV riders and campers and people coming in and getting all these cabins and renting the cabins out and just riding their ATVs all over the place, all these trails all over the place in Kentucky and West Virginia here. So that's the big thing here in town right now, in this area, actually. They come in here for the trails. Some people rent those things out, those cabins out year after year after year. They say all year long. The corporations come in here and rent them out, and and have little special events for their employees. Kind of go out and meet and greet each other, get to know each other, and we build the camaraderie and teamship that our team uh, atmosphere that's needed for businesses to succeed. So anyway, today I wanted to talk about some different topics and several things that are going on right now. First is, over this past weekend, I had family in for about 4 days, I guess. My sister came in with her son and his wife and his daughter, and then a couple other great nieces and nephews came in. Family came in, so we had a house full over the weekend, doing different things, and cooking out and eating good food and hanging out together. And Saturday night, she decided to ask me to go out to see a Clay Walker concert. I recognized some of the music. I certainly recognized it when he started playing Purple Rain, which I found surprising. But nonetheless, he did. He played Purple Rain and a couple other well-known artists' music. But it was fun. I enjoyed being out with the family. That was the biggest part about it, and enjoyed being out with them. And then I had to rush home, make sure mom and family was all right and all that. And yeah, family is a huge deal around here for me too, and everyone really, because this is the thing that has enabled me to actually get through a lot of stuff. Wasn't always that way. There were challenges along the way. Yeah, always have been. But for the most part, people in this area, even though most of them are related in one way or another, unsurprisingly, there, right? So here we are. We're meeting with people, we're going out every day. We see family, we see friends, I haven't seen too many high school classmates of mine. I did. I went to high school here. I graduated here in like 1977, last century, and then moved on from Belfry High. I went into the military after that, almost immediately, within just a couple of months, actually, maybe even a month. I didn't wait around. But anyway, this place, you know, people were wondering why or how can I live as myself here in this community, in this place. And everybody has this stereotypical impression of people living in the hills as just being these backwards hillbillies and stuff like that. That is the furthest thing from the truth, folks. That's the furthest thing from the truth. That is not what I see. That is not who I see. I see, when I go outside and go down to the street or go to the local store or the restaurant, I see people that I've known for a long time. I've been away a long time too, but people still here, family still here. Most of them are trying to get their kids away from here so they don't marry into the family tree. But that's the way it works. So it's good here, though. The stories that I heard about coming in here and what's the dangers, and yeah, every place has its dangers, but I'm going to say that this place has fewer dangers and threats than most places, most towns and cities. And I can't explain why. I really don't know exactly why that would be the case. But here, but I think part of it is also this too, that we have to figure out a way to be able to talk to people that does not try to force ourselves on them. I'm not interested in forcing. I just want to go to the bathroom when I need to go to the bathroom. That's all I'm interested in doing. Greg Gutfield, he was talking about all that stuff again today on the 5. Oh my God, Greg, if you're watching, are you ever going to let up on that? Because all we want to do is go to the bathroom and pee, and you got to stop. All right, that's just craziness. You have a fetish about us or something. I don't know what it is, but anyway. So, oh my God, this is here in the mountains. I feel safe here. There are places where I won't go, not in the dark anyway, but then again, that's because I can't really see well at night, especially if it's raining. I'm not going to go out. It's too dangerous, and the curves are just too treacherous. Now, look, there are a lot of 4 lanes around here all over the place now that weren't here when I was growing up. There's a lot of traffic in and out of this area, and most of them are coming in for ATV stuff, riding the trails and going in and doing all of those kind of things. That's what we're seeing the most of. Like, for instance, there's one thing in Williamson, the county seat of Mingo County, that's the Mingo County Chamber of Commerce. You can look that up online. You can go digging around in there, and you'll find the Mingo County Chamber of Commerce. And it's made entirely from big blocks of coal that have been shellacked. And that's the Chamber of Commerce building. And there's a statue of an Indian there in the front. That's Chief Mingo. There's a tribe of Indians that lived and resided in this area, Chief Mingo. So it's named Mingo County, West Virginia. Now, my family owned a lot of land around here. We came here in 1795, and there weren't a whole heck of a lot of people around here. The progenitor of my family, he was married twice. First time, his first wife died after the 5th child, I think, was born, maybe 5th or 4th. But then he had a whole bunch of kids by his second wife. And so my family's tied up into other large families in the area. The Maynards are around here, and the Lowe's, and I said the Williamsons and the Blevinses, and oh my God, who else? Lawsons and Priests and Robinettes, and phew. These families are all here, and many of them are all connected and related somehow or the other. But you would expect that, though, in a geographic area where you have so many families just coming in, a handful of families, and then what happens? They settle near each other, they find their places, they end up with a lot of property and all this kind of stuff. And so the city of Williamson was founded on some family property, okay? And it was a distant relative, now definitely a distant relative. His name was Wallace Williamson. And I don't really think he's got too many. Wallace has no progenitors left around here that I'm aware of. Ancestors here. Not ancestors, but yeah, progeny. They all left. And one of them was a gay man. Wallace J. the Third or something like that. Wallace John Williamson the Third. He was actually a professor of history at Princeton, maybe, or something like that. He lived in New Jersey. But that was like a long time ago, obviously. So, yeah, this is the family connected area. So I really feel no threat here. But then again, I'm saying all this stuff because I want to encourage people to kind of approach things differently when you're out in your communities, wherever you are. The way you approach this stuff, and the way I do it anyway, you can take this with a grain of salt or however you wish. But I really don't care that people look at me and they hear me and they see me and they see one thing and they hear something else. That doesn't bother me in the least anymore. They used to, but it doesn't bother me anymore because this is, who you see and who you hear is who you get. Okay. People have adapted to that everywhere. I've got zero problems with that. Now look, when I toured the country, I visited all the lower 48 states 3 years ago, I guess it was. And toured all the lower 48 states, went into and met with leaders in lots of VA facilities around the country, and at least one in every state, in lower 48 states. And I got to meet a lot of wonderful people in every state, everywhere in the lower 48. And I spent about 6 months out on the road traveling. And it was invigorating. There are places where I was able to go that people said I shouldn't go and had no problem, none whatsoever. They said, don't pull over and get gas in certain places right there because, that's the bad place there. Well, if you know anything about me, I take it as a challenge. I take that as a challenge. And so I'm going to go right there. I was at, Mount Rushmore. I was at Mount Rushmore and walked in, and I saw all of this stuff, and I'm looking around. I had my camera on a tripod. I'm looking at all this stuff and everything, taking pictures. And my friend who was speaking in my ear at the time said, "Hey, turn around. There's a dog behind you." I turned around and just said, "Hey, just having fun with the doggy, And you see the motorcycle people as I was walking out, motorcycle people over there, and had all their badges and patches all over their jackets and stuff. And most people would say, you need to stay away from those. But the guy also had a Marine Corps patch on. And he was the, whatever you call him, the leader of the pack. So I just walked over and introduced myself and said, "Hey, what branch did you serve in? Marine Corps? What'd you do?" And we chatted for a few minutes. So, obviously people are surprised by that. But, so I want to kind of show you what's the survival mechanism here. The family part of it is enormous. Okay, I've got 4 children and 8 grandkids, and one of them graduated high school this year, and 2 more graduate next year. I've got a large family. We're scattered all over the country. We're all military to some degree or another. So much so that I could fly the flags of all the military branches for my place, for my home, except for the Space Force and Coast Guard. And I'm hoping that somewhere out of those 8 grandkids or great grandkids as they come along, that somebody decides to go into the Coast Guard and the Space Force. Because I'd like to have a Guardian, and I'd like to have a Coastie flag. I can just say, yeah, I got them all right here. But my family has been involved in military stuff, well, since 1774, actually. That person who actually settled here in 1795 in Pike County and Mingo County, and they weren't called that then. I think this was Floyd County back when he got in here. And Mingo County wasn't Mingo County. It's part of Wayne County or Augusta County, something like that in Virginia. But he came in here with all his family, but he actually had been put in for a commission to be a lieutenant in the Virginia militia, and actually had served enlisted service in 1774. This was a battle as a precursor to the Revolutionary War, the Battle of Point Pleasant. Lord Dunmore's War, actually, it was called that too. But it was at Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and he was held in reserve to go in case they needed the help. But he was held back in reserve in Virginia, in Russell County, Virginia area. So my family's been involved in this for a long time. We've served in every major war that this country has been involved in from the very beginning. And I suspect it's probably more than that. I don't know all the details for some of it, even though I've spent years and decades doing family history. I found that I've got a lot of people who served in the South during the Civil War. One of them was conscripted to serve for the Union and didn't like that, abandoned his unit and went back to West Virginia, and his wife protected him up in the hollers. Because he wanted to be with his parents, his dad anyway, and brothers who were on the Confederate side of things. All right. So, but I've also got family members who served directly for the Union. I got both sides. And this is coming as a shock too. And something on Twitter today that Matt Walsh had put out there. And so he was talking about General Robert E. Lee. Look, General Robert E. Lee was a very, very smart leader. He was instrumental in the Mexican-American War. He became very influential during that, and he was a very accomplished and a very good general in that sense. But when the Civil War started up, he actually decided that he would stand with his state rather than with the United States. Now, in my perspective, that's traitorous because he had served, he had gone to West Point, he had served with the Union Army, but yet he chose to side with the South and serving with Virginia. And so he became their leader, military leader. So are we lost yet? Come on back, connection. I froze. Okay, I'm back. I froze for a second. I saw it. So Robert E. Lee, he defended slavery. And some of you are going to go, the war wasn't about slavery. Look, even right here where I live, there are people who will tell me the war was not about slavery. But yes, it was about slavery. And the apologists all came along afterwards and said, well, we don't want it to be said that that's what it was about. We just wanted to call it, states' rights and heritage and stuff like that. And that's what they did. They kind of tried to use propaganda to change the topic of the war. And it actually influenced a lot of people. I mean, come on, shoot, a lost cause. That's what it was. But if you know anything at all about the history of the Civil War and the Confederacy, then you know that the Constitution of the Confederacy protected slavery 4 times explicitly, protected it from any kind of abridgment, any kind of rule or law being made against it. It was protected in the Constitution of the Confederacy. So you can't tell me it wasn't about slavery. So Robert E. Lee was in defense of all of that. That's who he served. That's what he did. He chose that because that's where his family lived. That's where he had his connections to, was with his family in Virginia, which is, that's understandable. People do that. But he did, in fact, betray the U.S. and does not deserve to be honored in any capacity. As like Matt Walsh was saying, great general, yeah, sure. A good person, most likely was a good person. Very thoughtful, very moral person, except that his failing was over defending slavery. And that knocked down everything else that he had ever done. Now, look, I come at this also as a very distant cousin of Robert E. Lee. Yeah. There are Lees in my family that all came from that same bunch. Right there, Westmoreland, Virginia, Westmoreland County, and that whole region over there where Robert E. Lee was from. His dad was from over there. I mean, his grandparents, Henry Lighthorse Lee, and all these people were over there. They're all part of my heritage as well. So I come at it honestly, and I still will tell you that he was wrong to defend slavery. Now, look, at the time, there were people on both sides of that issue, but the moral compass, you've got to have a good, strong one. And sometimes even your country can be wrong. Even the state that you adopt as your own or you go back to as your own can be wrong. And that's what we're going to see happening here moving forward in the next several decades, probably long after I'm gone. People are going to rehash this time period in American history. There's going to be good things from it. There's going to be horrible things from this. And the rising authoritarianism that we're seeing is inescapable. I mean, it's there. And if you're blind to it, I don't know how to tell you otherwise. But I don't know how to get you to open your eyes to that fact. But that's what's going on. It's a rise of authoritarianism, but it's a little bit different than authoritarianism in any traditional sense. Okay, it's a little bit different. It has parts of the Gilded Age wrapped up in this, the social Darwinism of the 1880s through 1913, that period of time. You got that social Darwinism and authoritarianism that's picked up later. And it's That's just where we are right now. But the social Darwinism part, all you have to do is look in the Oval Office and you can see that the things that impress President Trump are gold and glittery things. Why do you think the Qataris gave him a darn jet that the family owned, the Qatari family owned? Because it was a family jet of royalty. And he actually loves those things. That's what he likes. He likes to surround himself with that kind of thing because it makes him feel validated, I suspect. And that's why the office, the Oval Office, is now looks more like something out of an Egyptian whatever, a dynasty or something like that. Because it's got all this gold and glittery things in there. It just, I mean, but we knew that's what we got, right? I mean, you got somebody who had the golden toilet and the golden escalator and all this stuff. It says gold and glitter. If you don't know that that's what that is, well, you know, he's always been attracted to the golden age, the Gilded Age. But the social Darwinism part is the part that is frightening, because what was the result of of all of that social Darwinism from the 1880s and through the 1913 period? Well, the people who had the money wanted more money, and they didn't care to do whatever they had to do to step on everybody along the way to get there. And they believed that everybody who ever existed, from children on up, if you weren't in their stratospheric place, level in society, then you obviously are one of the workers that work for them. That's what that is. They believe they were entitled to that. Okay. They believe they are entitled to it simply because they have something more than somebody else. And that's what's going on in this country right now. We see these people who have more than anyone else. As a matter of fact, they've got so much that nobody can come even close to it, that they believe they're entitled to their influence upon our government, influence over the rest of us, the influence over, like down in Florida, DeSantis saying that he wanted the children, the teenagers, to go work in the fields, and the parents rebelled, rightfully so about that. But that's what this is. And that's where we are. It's kind of it's different than authoritarianism. It's social Darwinism, but it's different from that too, because there's another level of that social Darwinism that actually has its hands across all of our government right now, all of the federal government as it currently stands. And I know that this particular group won't like the use of the term social Darwinism, but that's the word that describes them. You got the people who are theocratic fascists like Matt Walsh, who acknowledges that. You got the people who are like Matt Walsh, like Pete Hegseth and J.D. Vance and Kevin Roberts. And you got all these people over here who have this idea that their religious beliefs are superior to any government instituted below them. And they think they are entitled to rule the nation simply because of their religious beliefs. Their religious beliefs are identical, if you strip away the different words that are used to define things, to the structure that's used in Iran with the Ayatollah. You got the government in the country who can do anything that they want to a point, but the Ayatollah, he has the final say over it. If you don't like that, that gets changed. If you don't like this one, if he doesn't like that, that gets changed. Well, that's what the religious nationalists want, regardless of religion. They believe they're entitled to rule the land, regardless of the form of the government that's under there, whether it's authoritarianism, whether it's democracy, whether it's theocratic governments like over in Iran and different places, or like it's or any government anywhere. They believe that their religious views entitle them to rule over everyone else, and whatever form of government gets them there, they don't care. They really don't care. What they want is to make the state and the people in the eye of their beliefs, to make them look like that, made in the image of them. And I bet you can't find a single thing in any of their religious texts that actually support what they're saying. I mean, Beatitudes with Jesus there in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. There's nothing in that comes close to what I've been reading from some of these people who say there's one person over on X who calls himself the American Warrior for Christ. And then he came right out, and right underneath all that, this person goes, I don't know if it's a he or she, I didn't get into it much, but they said, we're no longer going to be feeding all the immigrants who come into the country. We're not going to be the soup kitchen for the world. So we're sending everybody back. We're not going to take care of anybody, and they can starve. That is so unlike anything that I know of Jesus or of Muhammad or of any religious leader. It doesn't fit. It doesn't match. It doesn't align. This is totally the opposite of anything that makes sense. And I chose religious nationalism deliberately because that's what this is. It could be Muslim, it could be Hindu, it could be Kush, it could be nativist, it could be anything, okay, including Christianity. And in this modern iteration of America, yeah, it's Christian nationalism, but it's not your garden variety Christian nationalism either, is it? So I came a long way in this conversation from talking about family and all that stuff. Look, I've got a lot of family here who are very religious, and they're also extreme. I mean, they are very much into President Trump and everything to do with him. This is red country here, Trump country. And so when I was traveling through Tennessee just back in May of this year, I actually stopped in a big superstore that was for Trump merchandise. I got myself a pair of short pants for my sister and a ball cap. One ball cap. I got a shirt from my brother and got a $50 bill that has Trump's face on it and all in gold, and got that for my sister, And so why? Because the world is not monolithic. The world is not just black and white. There's some stuff I agree with Trump on. There's some stuff that I know he is flat out wrong and it's evil. Attacking minorities is evil. So, you find ways to live where you are, and you do it in such a way that you're not offensive to everybody you come in contact with. For instance, I'm not going to go around here and say anybody who looks at me and goes, "But, sir," and that happens. It happens because, look, I've got this old rough, raspy old voice, okay? Now, I get it. I get that. You can look at me and see one thing, but when you hear the voice, that's the other cue. But am I going to go jump down somebody's throat over that? No. No, I'm not. I am not going to do that. That's crazy. Why would I do that? No, but why would I go around and tell people that, I've got these pronouns and use that? No, I'm not going to do that either. It's on them. I know me. I don't need them to validate who I am, and neither do you. You don't need to be forcing your way onto people's lives and beliefs. Let them live. And in return, if we can dial down the BS, they can let us live. But right now, the Fox News, they cannot stop talking about transgender people. As a matter of fact, they were talking about them all wanting to go into the bathrooms and cause all these problems and stuff like that. And I said, look, all we want to do is get into the bathroom, go in there and pee and get out. Well, wash our hands and then get out. And that's all we're looking to do. What are you in there for? Come on. Now, look, I will say this, and this people do not understand, I guess, coming from me. But if you went through male puberty, you have a statistical advantage. It may not be that you specifically have an advantage physically, but statistically, on average, there is a slight advantage that males have over women in their reach, in their lung capacity, all those things. If you went through male puberty, those are the differences in your body. And you're not going to be able to change that simply because you say that you're changing that. It doesn't work that way. I know that my genes on a superficial level say XY. But I use superficial because I know that the science is catching up with this and beginning to realize that there's a little bit of tweaking on some of those X's and Y's in there that don't happen on off or don't happen yes, no, or binary way. There's some room to move around in that. We're learning more and more about it every day. We're seeing that, beginning to see the reality of that. We know that. But the point is this: if you want to survive and thrive in this world today, make peace with who you are, and then let other people live.